Hello everyone, it's Cheryl Millett here, live at 5. It's always a bit tricky to see when it's actually going to start as far as number goes here, but I think it's stopping. It's starting. Here we go. Cheryl here, live at 5, and I guess it's Thursday, July the 9th, and if you're in Toronto, it is absolutely sweltering heat. This morning, as early as it can be, feels like you're in Mexico. You're in the tropics. Now, recently my uncle said that Ontario can be considered somewhat tropical versus other places, especially in Canada, where they're arid or dry heat. And it absolutely feels like that. So yesterday I went and got the spring water at the new spring. And I want to tell you a little bit of story here before we go into the commons. But at the spring, it's a new spring for me. There's not as many trees around. It's not as pretty with the river. It's just something that comes out of the ground, and the farmer's fields around, and he keeps this cut, but there's a whole patch of spearmint or mint right there, and I planted some here. The idea is a couple came, and they're from the area, and they aren't a well, but they get the spring water and they use it to water their plants and drink it of course as well. But what he asked me, the gentleman was filling up his, we were just finished ours, and he says, do you notice a change in taste with the water over time? And I said, yeah, absolutely. Because what happens with the water, when it's a river, when it's a waterfalls, is the water gets stagnant, and think of it as clumping molecules together. It's like it's slowed down, it's not moving, and so they're not being agitated by the flow, and they come together, and they're just, I don't want to say they're less vibration, but at the same time they're clumping together. And this is what I've understood through the research, is that they are clumping together. And this would mean not ideal, not ideal. The charge, if we have to think about negative charge being very positive, with rain, with showers, with water, it's invigorating. Whereas still water, be it even your bathtub, is not so invigorating, which is why take a bath before you go to bed to help you sleep. It kind of drains you of your energy. Is that a good thing? Not really. Not really. So what I'm going to probably work on towards is actually going to get water every couple of weeks. It's on my mind to do it for years, but I also noticed the change in water as well. It's funny, even the other spring, a young fella, when I mean young, probably in his 20s or 30s, much younger than me, had asked the same question. It was almost like there was this, you say hello, and then there was this pause, and as you're kind of wrapping up, there's this, do you notice something different in the taste? Same exact question, but that would be why. The water's been stagnant, it's sitting there in the bottles, and it would lose its vibration, its free flow, it's clumped together. So that's kind of interesting. When we think of water, we think of stale food, stale chips, stale water. Maybe that's the best way to kind of look at it. So I thought I'd come on today, kind of last minute. I didn't know if I was going to be able to come on. I'm working on a video project with my uncle, who's a biblical archaeologist, and he just spent a couple months in Israel. I'm not sure if I brought this up. He left early February and was supposed to come back early April, but didn't come back until mid-June. And that was because of this event, the flights being stopped, and yeah, so he had to hang out really in Tel Aviv for the most part, but did kind of go back into Jerusalem a couple times. But he has hours of footage of film of the city, so I'm learning a lot. Ophel Walls, the Crusaders, the Old City, the New City, the archaeology, the City of David, the Dome of the Rock, the Muslim Quarter, the first Christianity, church, Christianity church, where even the Last Supper may have been, in the upper room, and all these different words are, and then asking the questions. Well, how does this refer to the Bible? And so there's a lot still unknown in some ways, and maybe that's because, not having read the Bible, in any detail. Just in the old growing up Christian, go to church, Bible school kind of scenario, but that's about it. So I'm exploring, learning, at least learning about it and see what it's all about. But the idea, really what I wanted to come on here today about is to talk about common sense, talk about what we have in common, to talk about things around common. What was the other thing? Yeah, even the common cold. So the word common, really at the end of the day, when I'm looking at the post, even the last post I did last night and didn't really anticipate to have so much kind of go into, just kind of learned how many people were up at that time of night. That's not usual for me, but, and I did have to go, okay, time to go to bed, time to break away from the post that I did and all the comments that were kind of coming through. So what's in common with that? What's in common that I hear in that post, but in the issues around vaccinations, the issues around the conversing about those topics and other topics, is that we do want the best, as in we do want safety. We want the best. And that is what we do have in common. When it comes to, if I'll speak to vaccines, people don't want to get sick. Now, I think there's some fears in there as well, as we think, oh, something from outside is actually going to make us better or prevent and do things. But there's different understandings. I'm not going to go into that. But at the end of the day, what's in common is people want health. They want to be healthy. Okay, they don't want to die, and they want things to be done, as in if you want vaccines, then it's you don't want to get sick. If you don't want vaccines, you don't want to get sick. See the common thinking in that? So for people like myself who doesn't want to get vaccines, well, I don't want to have to get sick from getting the flu shot. I don't want to have to get sick with shingles potentially, if by getting the shingles vaccine or the measles vaccines, or even my daughters will suppress my immune system. So you see where I'm going with that is I'm not doing it because I want to stay healthy. That's why I'm not doing it. And the people who are taking them with the complete comfort of taking the vaccines or the shots, whatever, is to stay healthy. Same thing. We have the same thing in common. And here's what you're going to hear more and more. Then be comfortable with people having their own choice. Okay? So that's what we have to have in common. And everybody they have their choice to get them or not to get them. Why care about my health? Let me care about my own health. And you care about your own health. And you get the vaccines. So we really don't need to. Because we have this in common, it's coming to the common ground where, listen, if that's your choice, right? So common ground is choice. And end of story. Who are you to know what's better for me? Who am I to know what's better for you? Let's be in the common ground place. Let's understand we have choice and that we really do have the same thing in common when it comes to the choice that we're making on things. That's what it is. Simple as that. Now the idea is, and this is another things that kind of come up, that to understand what's also in common to do with this current event, and that is simply this: COVID is either real or not real. COVID, is there a real threat or not a real threat? Is it a pandemic or not a pandemic? Should we be wearing masks or not wearing masks? Should we be having this kind of treatment or that kind of treatment? You see all these questions, and I can go in through 100 of them, seriously. The science is on both sides, people. The science is on both sides. And reading articles or reading research, and it doesn't matter which side you want to think you are on, but at the end of the day, we're still wanting to be healthy. Don't wear a mask, we're wanting to be healthy. Wear a mask, you're wanting to be healthy. See how that works? We have something in common because we want to be healthy. Same thing. But there is science on both sides. So when we're coming in, and you have to imagine that we have limited time to write everything. We have limited space. basically, we could write books probably to better understand how things are kind of coming to the hours and the minutes. But if you have a belief on something, it's probably very difficult for you to read something that goes against that belief. So people aren't spending the time on both sides. I'm spending the time on reading both sides. I just sit back and I kind of read them. And partially is to understand more about where people are coming from, and or that's kind of science. But when I follow the science, it's not really firm. Okay, it's not really, the may and the should be, and in my experience, and what's behind the red curtain is what's behind the red curtain. If you're looking at a red curtain, you do not know what's behind the red curtain. You can hypothesize, you can theory, you can bring in your experience, but you don't know what's behind the red curtain. And that's what's in common a lot of times with the logic and the common sense that's kind of coming through during this event. Is there's a lot of that. There's a lot of that. But what's kind of coming through is people questioning. So if you have to think about the people that are, well, from scientists to pathologists to researchers to, all across the board people. We're not just talking about average people just making up stuff and wanting to not wear the masks. That's not what it is. There's science behind it. And this is where, it's very comforting to take a position and to hold that position. Where it's uncomfortable, people, is where you decide, I'm going to look at both sides. And I'm going to view both sides. And even though there's different parts of this, I'm going to look at each part as a different. So there may be certain things that make more sense on one side, let's say, and a whole lot less sense on other pieces of it. So let's just say, I'll give you an example. The government will say, okay, you have to keep your distance and you have to wear a mask. Well, maybe wearing the mask is completely ludicrous compared to keeping your distance. Completely ludicrous. And then maybe keeping your distance might not be a bad thing. It's even with the cold and all of those things. But understand, people, where I'm coming from. When they say catch a cold, it's not necessarily because you got it from somebody else. Now remember the stories of going out with no coat, a child going outside with no coat. And what did their parents say? You're going to catch a cold. So why did they catch a cold when they got cold? Because they brought down their immune system. They stressed out their body. And partially because the elimination processes and the toxicity that we're exposed to, processed foods and everything, it's there to get out. So in some ways, if you catch a cold, let's just say your lifestyle isn't as healthy as it needs to be. Does that make sense? So there's many people, they'll go into the same rooms as people that have colds, and they never catch a cold. And why is that? It's not black and white here, but the idea is the common cold is something that sits underneath the surface, potentially ready in the right environment at the right time. I don't know if we'll call it a right time, but at a time when it can surface and manifest and be there to teach us things. Flu, when I think about symptoms and COVID in the event, I go, all right, let me think about the flu. I have never said to anybody, I have the flu, when I don't show any symptoms. No, I don't have the flu unless I have symptoms. End of story. With COVID, what didn't make sense right from the very beginning is you can actually have COVID but not have any symptoms. It makes completely no sense. What that tells me is like the common cold, is there's something sitting underneath the surface, and it won't be a problem unless the body is not able to, or the body is in need of cleansing, needing of detoxifying, needing for that to manifest as it needs to do, and it will. The idea that there's so many different pieces to this that come together, and we're going to argue on so many of them, masks included, I was just told today, and I have to do my research on it, that somebody died from wearing the mask. I think a young girl, but a girl. I'm not sure young, I'm not sure what age, I've got to do the research, died from wearing the mask. And then I did post something where it spoke to a young girl. Again, not sure in the age though, so to tell you the truth, but somebody, I think she was young, and they're trying to discover what was going on. What they discovered was it was wearing the mask for 8 hours. Well, let's just say over a period of 8 hours, 5 to 6 days a week, and she got pleurisy. So that's an issue with the lungs and respiratory. So these are real things. If you block the oxygen, for good, you know you're going to die. You're just gonna suffocate. So think about, in this heat in Toronto, this is where it doesn't make any sense at all. It seems like this is absolutely ridiculous. I'm going to tell you a real story too from my this morning here in my dog walk and meeting one of the neighbors. So common sense has got to prevail. I mean, common sense has to come in, trickle in, jump in, seep in, whatever it is. Let common sense come in. Forget the science, okay? Forget the science. Science is a made-up thing. And I'm going to say, I'm not afraid to say this, people. Science was made up. Science, the word science was made up because it was a group of people that wanted to see how things work. Now remember, they're not controlling how things work. They're just seeing how it works. And when seeing how it works, they're not always getting the whole picture. They're getting whatever they can see with the limited technology, the limited senses that they have, and so forth. It is almost like a painter. You have a bunch of paint, you don't know how it's going to come on the canvas until it's done, and that's it, right? It's like art, okay? Science is like art. It is trying to figure things out. You're taking the brush, you're trying to see the shade, oh, you don't like it, oh, you can take it off. I mean, if you've been an artist, at least in oil painting, you can remove it. You don't like it, didn't work out, you can remove it. In science, what you're doing is you're observing. You're not holding the brush. You're not holding. Well, they tend to try to do that, of course. But let's just say in science, you're watching nature. Everything next to you participating in it changes the way things work. End of story. It would change it. So common sense here is that wearing a mask does not make sense when it's hot for any length of time, especially for these workers. The whole question about are you safe without the mask is another question altogether. Common sense over these few months is it is not as bad as they thought it would be. Oh sure, there are people just happy to see the numbers go up. Oh yes, yes, the numbers are going up. I'm right. And that is the truth of it. You know, you're happy to see the numbers go up. People are happy to see the numbers go down, so forth. You're kind of taking one or either the side. For me, I don't care about sides. This is the number. End of story. How did we get there? What does it mean? Is the test real? Are the false positive? How much is that? I mean, I'm just it's so logical for me to look at these different pieces and to think about each and every piece at the same time looking at the big picture, right? But it does make common sense. Let me tell you the story this morning. Now this is a person who is a neighbor who I've seen with her dog many times, and she just lives over one street over. So we just, you know, from time to time we talk about things. We talk about a little bit about health. I think over the years, certain people are warming up to the idea that that the medicines aren't the answer. Anyway, won't go into that. But we decided to talk a little bit about this. I don't know, definitely I'm just going to give you the end of it as opposed to how we get there. So we did start talking about masks. And she said, Cheryl, I was at the endodontist getting some dental work done last week, and while she's sitting in there, she was wearing a mask, and she had to wait for 45 minutes, which to me, doctors, get the timing correct, because to actually have people sitting there for 45 minutes in your reception is not acceptable. To me, if I was running the show, it would not be acceptable to have people wearing masks any longer than they have to. So she's there for 45 minutes, and she's going, wow, I mean, after that 45 minutes, I felt so tired. I was starting to feel very lethargic now. She had to take it off because of the dental work. But I was telling you the story about the 8 hours and the story about the pleurisy and the girl who was working and having to wear the mask. And then she told me her story. So the idea here is we've got to be open, and we've got to see how common sense. I don't know about you, but even in the middle of winter, to wear a scarf around my face like this, it's just not the flow of air. It's just not that, and I will not have it on as much as possible. So I think about these other times in whatever the year or for other scenarios when it may be likened to that, but so stuffy. And even here, I'm in my office, I closed the door because the neighbors were chatting. As soon as I close the door and the airflow isn't in here, I don't have air conditioning. I don't want air conditioning. And at the flow, I can feel it. It's almost like things like the water. It just becomes stagnant, and I can feel it. Things start to become heavy, and they're just, it's not flow. But with the door open and the window open, you don't get that. Sure, I can feel the heat, but it's not the stuffy, heavy kind of scenario thing. But that's one of I mean, that's really what I wanted to come on today, talk about the commons, and to emphasize that we really have our health in common here, no matter which side. And if we could just understand that it's our choice how we take care of our health. And this is every aspect of our health, from how you choose to exercise to how you choose not to exercise, to be active, not, what you eat, how you sleep. It's your business. Really, it is. Of course, we get into conversations with people who love us, people who have read things and learned different things, whether it's these wonderful electromagnetic frequencies and chemtrails and all these other things that would not be serving our health, right? So at the end of the day, if we think about health, we think about, do we have any fears about death? And that is one of the number one fears, besides getting on a stage, is death. You can see how heated any conversations would be around any aspect of health. At the end of the day, you are responsible. I am responsible. You are responsible. Your older kids are responsible. Your parents are responsible to look after themselves. If you want to say, I've heard, have you heard this? Great. And I'm not telling you how to speak. I'm just saying, as we converse on any topic here and anywhere else, that people have choice. And if people choose to wear masks, people choose. I'm not going to sleep over it. I'm just not. It's your choice. And you have your reasons for choosing that. And it's, who am I to know what's better for you? Well, maybe, as a healthcare practitioner, I could surely comment and see if you've thought about this or heard about that. Great. As a practitioner, when people come to see me, they are almost giving me permission, really, to bring forth information that might help them. They're looking for something they feel they do not have. And that's acceptable in a sense, but I still keep it very much that their health is their own health, and they're in charge of it, and I can inspire them and motivate them as much as I can. But as the old saying goes, you can bring a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. One of those things, right? So at the end of the day, we could be stressing ourselves out onto what choice we should make, yes, and we can be stressing ourselves out trying to convince others or each other as to what side is right. Why don't we just use common sense, put that in the garbage, and understand that everybody has choice? Right? You're going to do what you're going to do. We can think of all kinds of circumstances where you're going to choose what you're going to choose, and in some cases people won't care. And you want to buy a car? You want to buy a red car? I don't care. Go buy a red car. You want to buy a truck? Go buy a truck. Whatever it is, you know where I'm going with that. Let health be the same thing. But we fear death. So remember, one of the biggest fears we have is death. And this is why this particular topic will be up to controversial, be up for just kind of all the different things and places we can get into, so we can do. But why do that? Why do we have to do that? And great talk. Expand on your own conclusion. One way thinking is dangerous. Yeah, one way thinking is dangerous. I think the idea really is that we have to remain open, and the openness is about, I mean, it's less about control and less about knowing or minding, it's more about minding our own business and being open. So when we're open to listen, we're open to hear different things, we're open to explore, we're open to research, and we don't go down into the rabbit hole of, oh, that's it, that's the answer, it's got to be this, and then you try to find all the things that are going to solidify that way, that answer. And ideally it's about being open. That's the common sense. So we're open to hear what people's choices are. We're open to hear what people's perspectives are. We're open to hear what, why they do what they do, their choices, everything like that. Again, everybody here has their own choice. You make your own choices. You can't blame anybody. I mentioned that in the other video. There's no blaming because everything you choose. But the government told me. No, you chose to believe what the government told you to do. End of story. Your choices are your own choices. And I remember going through this as a, I don't know, teenager or whatever age, doing things because somebody else saying, this is what they told me. I remember going through that very young and thinking, no, really it is, I chose to do it. But choice is important, and choices are being made all the time. All the time. You choose what you eat, you choose when you go to sleep, you choose to stop eating, you choose when you're full, you choose to keep eating, you choose to add 3 desserts to your day, you choose to overeat, you choose to undereat, you choose to go gamble, you choose everything, every little thing is your choice, and you chose. How and why you chose will be up a whole other, it's a whole other conversation, because it's more about what you've listened to, what your beliefs are, and who are you listening to. Some people are very convincing. I have to tell you that. They're so convincing. They've got, I remember being with NLP, somebody, and they made some sort of a hand signal, and I'm like looking at them, because I'm sitting in present mode, just watching and observing without anything kind of happening. And then this person says, yes, now you're more confident. And I didn't have the heart to say to him, I'm sorry, it didn't work. I did not have the heart to say. I said, he's in his world. He's in his own world, and who am I to burst his bubble? And he didn't ask me any questions. It was a very much one-sided conversation. As now that might be a clue for some of us here. It's as much to listen as it is to speak. And that's important too, in being open to hear what other people have to say. Now, we can search and find all kinds of information, and if we want to go down the rabbit hole with mainstream media and corporations own it, and who says what, and is this real, and to believe, I remember CNN, and it was on every elevator, and it had the TV on it, or different, was there, or this is the channel that people used to turn to. But the idea is now, watching those kind of channels, wow, it's biased. I mean, you can tell by the emotion, passion, and feeling that they're putting into it, that it's just not the kind of news that I would even bother with, because of the way they talk to things. They're not bringing in both sides. It's just I mean, even if I didn't know that the corporations read mainstream media, it's almost crazy. But reading research and reading articles, same thing. You got to stand back, sit back, be in that place of common sense, asking questions, make decisions for yourself. But you'll understand, after you've read them enough with that open kind of perspective, when they say the words may, and they say the words possible and in theory, and you could read through the whole article, and then at the end, well, we have to do more research. Research. I will say that in research even. You have to read the whole thing. And even then, if I'm reading entire articles, I'll have 50 questions that are unanswered within that one article. They didn't give me enough information to make any decision, seriously. And they don't even have links to the research sometimes. And it reminds me, and I'll just leave you with this story, reading about a fella who decided he was going to prove something. And he created out of thin air, as research has been too, and they've got charged with it. Do you think mainstream media posts that? No. So here's a fella, he says, I'm going to do an experiment. And this experiment is actually going to be telling everybody how chocolate is healthy for them. So he created a wonderful article. And if you read it, it's so convincing only because it's professional, and it kind of references things and all of this. Whether people clicked on the links or not, that's up to them, or the links were there, I can't remember. This is several years ago. Then I think he waited, I can't remember if it was 2 or 3 years later, and he came out and said how many times people took his information and regurgitated without doing the research on his information. And I can't remember how many, but hundreds of times, hundreds, if not 1,000 or something. It was something like that, where people had taken his article and quoted it or linked to it as to chocolate is healthy for us. And he wanted to prove a point that anybody can put anything out there and make it convincing enough, if you know what you're doing. I think he was either an investigative reporter or writer, editor, something of that nature. And he did it. And he did it so well that, yeah, for many years I was hearing people, chocolate's good for you, chocolate's good for you. And I'm going, well, where are you getting that information from? And going to many different stories. But that's just kind of, the story on that. And that's what I remember. So it's these instances that I park in my brain to be reminded that these are how things work. But it's the questioning that we have to do. And it's the questioning, it's reading between the lines, unfortunately. And some of us may be more suited to doing that. Some of us may have the background to do that. I get it. Some of us may have the experience in doing that. Whatever it is, yes, that could be true. And it's not to say that you can't. It just means that's the way it is at this moment in time. So, Aline, thank you for your comments there. And yeah, I definitely wanted to come on today sooner than later and talk about the common sense and talk about the common goals that we have. And just, yes, we do have things in common. Absolutely. So it's just we're taking a side in how we get there. And that's okay. Choice. Got to make sure. I mean, choice, I think I remember listening to somebody was saying Puerto Rico. Lovely fella, very grounded. And he had said choice was, I want to say number 1 or number 2 gift that we have in life, in our life. Choice is one of our, I'll say gifts. A gift. I'm thinking there was another word that they used, but it sounds good. Choice. Choice is our gift. Right, so one of our top gifts. That sounds good. Anyway, I want to thank everybody for coming on and watching, and continue to enjoy whatever weather you have wherever you are. And if I don't open this door soon, I'm going to be cleansing. I'm still doing the cleanse, and that's why I don't mind cleansing at this time, because there's no feeling cold. If I cleanse in the winter time and I'm not eating as much, I can feel, I have to dress more warmer when there's a chill. Like I said, I like to keep the windows open, like to keep the temperature low anyway, but with no air conditioning, I have no choice. It's high there, but it's really ideal for cleansing. It's really ideal for getting the most out of it. But a little bit, little bit of flow of air right now would be very good. So anyway, take care, everybody. Please be calm. Remember, it's your choice. Everybody has their choice. You have a choice. They have a choice. Are you feeling that they're putting you at jeopardy? I get that. But if you use common sense here, I don't think any of us would want to put anybody in jeopardy if we didn't know some of the science. So we have, what would I say? We have science opposing sciences. And that's not uncommon, people. Having theories, two different theories in science, science opposing opinion, yes. But that's for people to explore and make and question. But I'm saying right now, geez, if you're not around anybody, if you're in your car, if you've got to go for appointments, just go for appointments or in and out. Don't wear the mask as much as possible if that is your thing. And for workers, oh man, I'm just hoping that I don't know what I'll call it, but today at Queen's Park, I believe, there was up towards the Supreme Court, there was something, a motion being there to undo this mandatory mask thing. And I can only hope and pray, because if somebody has died due to this, and I'll say stupidity, I'm not afraid to say it, because I've explored all the science on the other side. And it is craziness to wear a mask that long period of time. And then I think about, oh my goodness, the people in surgeries are wearing their mask, and this is a problem, and they're doing surgery on people. But I have to say, the people who are surgeons who are wearing the mask are probably so super focused. They're probably on adrenaline. They're probably so, how can I say it? I think they may have to take breaks. I'm not sure. They probably have to stay hydrated. They have a group around them, a team around them. The people in surgery probably have some of all of that stuff to do, because basically they're in a room that would not have the same, maybe they do have flow of air, but there are usually no windows in those rooms, the surgery rooms, and they absolutely have to make sure they're as pristine, clean as possible, so that when it comes to open wounds, but it happens. And even that neighbor I spoke to this morning, she mentioned in her second cesarean that she got an infection. Now, fortunately, it was, what was it? Oh, it might come to me, but it was serious staph infection. But it was only on the surface. She felt sore and tender. She could see something happening with where the cesarean wound was, and she got care right away. But the doctor had said, you got that in OR, so the operating room. And people, that is still a thing. So if I have to leave you with that, sepsis, infection in the blood to do with open surgery of any nature, that is real. Why do they think that they don't want to keep you in the hospital? Because there is an opportunity, a chance, a good chance, and maybe it's different from one hospital to the other, different scenarios, to keep you in the hospital. That's where things are circulating. That's where things can happen when you have open sores, wounds, cuts, whatever it is. That's where it's going to happen. Not in nature as much as you think, but in these closed spaces where a lot of people are, and it's dependent upon humans to do what they need to do. It's not to say crazy things don't exist out there. Absolutely. I mean, in nature. So I'm going to leave you with that. Stay cool if it's warm, stay warm if it's cold, and there you go. So take care. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Maybe I'll come on tomorrow. Maybe I'll come on Saturday. Probably not tomorrow, but maybe Saturday. But then I'm out. I'm actually going up north to pick blueberries for a couple of days and go to my cousin's wedding up in Victoria Harbor. So I am going to do live at 5 on Monday in the blueberry fields if I can. I think I did that a couple years ago. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm live at 5 up there. And if I don't see you before then, enjoy your weekend. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.